Okay, thank you. All right, my name is Mickey Weldon, Chief Academic Officer over the Curriculum Department. I just listed these names again. Mr. Atwater introduced everyone. Obviously, with curriculum, it takes several people working to make sure that we're providing education as best we can for each boys and girls that comes to our school every day. There's several other directors that play a huge role in this as well. Everyone that stood up here earlier, obviously, we think of nutrition, Ms. Hayes, our kids being fed. Many of them, as you know, there's 2 warm meals they're getting every day. Vital to what we do with curriculum, the different department areas, to our federal funds, to technology, as you're going to see in just a moment when Mr. Judy presents. So many of these pieces have to work together for us to provide that education for our boys and girls. And sometimes those lines get a little fuzzy, sometimes they get a little crossed, sometimes they get rather heated in some of our meetings. And you can attest that with your principals. We have our discussions on a monthly, weekly, and daily basis. What we do, obviously our first goal is to enhance teaching and learning. We want to provide the best education we can, obviously for every child every day when they come through the building. Obviously, there's a lot of obstacles that we have to face to make that happen. Looking at our local, state, and federal compliance, you've already heard from Mr. Atwater, you've already heard from Bobby, and you heard from Mr. Pittman. There are certain things that we have to follow, certain laws, guidelines, policies that we have to keep in place. Many times with our discussions, when we have those have to be in front of us at all times. We're constantly working with our board members and our subcommittee meetings to make sure that policies are being followed. If new policies need to be added or current policies need to be adopted or changed, we're constantly looking at that from day to day, month to month, year to year. Each year when we have our legislative session, we get new laws that govern education and what we do. So we have to make sure that we're staying in compliance with that at all times. Research and national trends. One of the difficulties you heard from Bobby Smith with CCRPI, you heard him, 6 years it's changed 4 times. Well, obviously, as our economy changes, as our targets in our economy change, supply and demand, that has a direct effect on what we do and what we're teaching kids. Because again, our goal is to prepare them for the workforce, prepare them to be good citizens, and that changes constantly. So again, the only constant in curriculum, the only constant education is change. Because if we're not changing, if we're not staying on top of our research and those national trends, obviously we're going to get behind the curve and not provide our boys and girls what they need. Professional development is a big piece of what we do. We're working with our principals. They have job alikes at our RESA. They work with us very closely. We send them to conferences. You'll hear every now and then with that principals at that conference. Many times in South Georgia, unfortunately, we have to go find the professional development. The bigger cities, it's there. It's much more easily accessible, so we have to go to places to make sure we're hearing the right people in our field, telling us the right things, and giving us better ideas on what we can do for our boys and girls, for our teachers as well. Providing constant professional development for them. Talk to some of the veterans in the room that have been in education 10, 20 years, and talk to them about what the first day looked like when they walked in their classroom as a first-year teacher compared to what they're being asked to do now. Not only what they're being asked to do, how we're teaching. We've changed our standards, so to speak, in the state of Georgia 4 times now in the last 10 years. That's not easy to stay on top of. The different strategies that we use in instructing kids. We know boys and girls learn differently than they did many years ago. Visual learners. Technology, this is what they're wanting, this is what they're asking for. Some of our teachers, some of our principals were not great in technology 20 years ago. Technology was just kind of something that was just coming out. We had a record player at the board office the other day when I was talking about that. Used to be our media when I was in kindergarten because we played records on it, and that was great. But that was the extent of technology in the classroom, and that wasn't that long ago, just a few years ago. So you can see as we keep moving and those targets continue to change, we got to continue to change what we do and how we do it to make sure we're meeting the needs of our boys and girls and our faculty and staff. Advise and support. Again, those conversations working with our principals, working with our academic coaches, making sure we're all on the same page as best we can. It's not an easy task because we don't see each other every day. We're not in the buildings with each other every day. Many times we're at different places, but yet we've got to try to stay on the same page and make sure we're consistent as best we can throughout the system and strive for efficiency. We want to do things smarter, not harder. And I know you've heard that often throughout your career as well, but that is one of the things we try to do every day. We know we ask a lot of our teachers and our principals and our academic coaches. Again, we try to give them the tools to be as efficient as they can so it's not as taxing. One of the things that you're going to be heavily involved in at your school with your local school governance team is our school improvement plans. We are a Title I system. All of our schools qualify for federal funding. One of the requirements of federal funding is a school improvement plan. Not a very hard thing. We look at our data, we look at our demographics of our schools, we look at the challenges that our schools have, and our principals working with their leadership team and their local school governance team put that plan together on a yearly basis. Again, it's one of those components we have to receive our federal funding, but it's just good business. And again, making that an efficient process to make sure we're doing what we need to improve as a school to help improve that learning environment for our boys and girls. Data-driven, research-based decisions, and it's almost to the point now that if you're not looking at your data, if you're not working in those areas that you know that you are struggling, then again, you're not meeting those goals. That CCRPI score is not going to be where it needs to be, and ultimately, we're not going to graduate as many kids as we should be. So making sure that we're looking at our data, making sure we're taking that into consideration with all the decisions that we make to make sure we're doing, again, what's best for boys and girls. With our school improvement plans, those plans should align to our strategic plan, as Mr. Atwater mentioned earlier. We've been working off our strategic plan for 5 years now. We make those adjustments each year. We push those down to our principals. Our principals then take that to their faculty and staff and their local school governance teams. So these are the areas, again, these are our goals, what we need to do to make sure that we are aligning what we're doing at the school level with the system level. Our school parent engagement plans and parent compacts, you're going to hear Dr. Slavin mention that in just a moment. Those are, again, a vital tool for us to make sure we're all on the same page, that we're getting the message out there to our parents, to our community, to our students, what we're going to do each year to make those necessary improvements. We have maybe too many data points in consideration sometimes. We have various items and areas that we look at for data when we're working with our boys and girls and some of those decisions that we're making with our teachers and with our principals. Milestones, and you heard that with Bobby Smith. It is a state required test that we take in the spring each year. K through 8 is our EOG, or our end of grade assessments. Once you get to 9th grade, you begin the end of course assessments. Now we do also have some 8th graders that are taking high school attainment courses. They take end of course grades or end of course tests as well. Bobby mentioned the 4 levels that we look at with each grade level, with each student, and those levels: distinguished, proficient, developing, and beginning. That helps us identify those areas of need. One of our biggest data points, also how well our principals, schools, and teachers are doing as well. Some of our other tests that we look at, some of the other pieces of data, our G-Kids. This is an assessment that we give to our kindergartners each year to see how well they're doing, what they're coming to us with. Gifted and special education, students going through their tier process. If they continue to show struggles, may go through testing for our special education. Gifted, obviously looking at how proficient some of our kids are or above proficient they are, may allow them the opportunity to be tested into our gifted program. Our end of pathway assessments, this is through our CTAE program. Our pathways, Mr. Matthews works closely with Ms. Siegler at our high school and with our CTAE teachers. End of pathway assessment is something that we have worked very hard to improve. We have a lot of students getting their pathway completion But again, we want them to also walk out the door with industry certification. This is also something that we're going to work very closely with our College and Career Academy to modify our curriculum to make sure we're meeting those industry needs as well as the state requirements from the state of Georgia. AP exams with our college credit and access with ESOL, those are also tests to see how well we're doing with those students. Our different education programs. Pre-K continues to grow. Very glad to say we added another pre-K class this year. One of the goals through our charter system contract is we want the number of pre-K classes to mirror the size of our kindergarten. We want more students with us at an earlier age. One of the biggest movements you're seeing and hearing in education, especially for your title districts, is getting kids sooner. You're going to begin to hear us talk more about 18 month to 48 month. What are we doing with those kids? How are we touching those kids? Now, that's not going to show up on CCRPI, not right away. It's not something we're necessarily required to do with some of those younger kids, but it's something that we need to do. Because when we're looking at students, especially those that are economically disadvantaged, they're coming to us, even in pre-K, with much wider gap than our students that are from your average to above average income households. So we've got to start reaching out to our community groups, our faith-based groups, anyone that's willing to go through some training with us that we can help show them how to work with these younger kids on their language skills, their verbal skills, looking at sight words, anything that we can do to help them show up at our door in pre-K and close that gap than what we're seeing right now. So you're going to hear us begin talking more about that in the near future. Our gifted program, especially at the K-5 level, we have a gifted teacher at each of our K-5 schools. We're very proud of that. I will say that was a commitment from our school system. Some of the schools may not have enough kids to necessitate fully funding a gifted teacher for the entire day. So that is something that our Board of Education, with the efforts of Mr. Atwater and our Finance Department, have taken on. We know that was something, we knew that was something that was needed at our schools, so we're pushing very hard to get those teachers more training. Now that we have several new ones in your buildings and they're doing a great job, we're very proud of that. But again, those positions are not necessarily fully funded in each building. The RTI process, response to interventions. This is simply our process, much easier to say than do. It is our way of identifying those kids that need additional help, those kids that are struggling to stay proficient at their grade level. It's basically an individual plan for each of those kids to make sure that we are fulfilling their needs, differentiating our instruction. It may be that they need a little extra time. It may be that they need to be pulled into small groups or some of our other instructional plans. We believe every child can learn. And I don't think there's a person in here that works at Chick County School System that doesn't believe that. Some just need a little more help and some just need a little more time. Okay? EIP is our early intervention plan. Again, most of these students that will be in your Tier 2 and Tier 3 in our RTI process will be your EIP students. And again, we receive additional funding for these students to make sure that we're giving them the additional help that they need. REP begins in 6th grade, goes 6 through 12. Again, additional funding for those students that are struggling a little bit, just need a little extra help. Maybe they need a different class to support their English or math class that they're currently in. IEP is an individual education plan. These are for our special needs students, okay? And I know we're throwing a lot of acronyms at you, and that's just what we do in education, unfortunately. But an IEP is a Tier 4 intervention. It is a student that is receiving special needs services. ESOL is a term you'll hear quite a bit, which is our English language learners. Our English language learners continue to grow. We have a lot of students that come to us struggling with English. We have great programs, especially at our lower grades level, to address the needs of these kids. We have at least one teacher in each building supporting. Some buildings have more than that based on the number of students that we have. If you will see and talk to your principal about the CCRPI, you will see the progress we have made with our ESOL students. They're doing very well. Migrant is a program that is federally funded. We do not have as many migrant students as we've had in the past. Many of our families that were migrant, that were going around the United States for different reasons to work, many of our employers here in Tift County have found different ways for our migrant population to stay here and offer them work year round. So our migrant numbers, even though we do still have some migrant students, those numbers appear to be on the decline as compared to years past. Pbis, this is probably something your principal has talked to you quite a bit if you've already had a local school governance team meeting. Pbis is two things, I think. One, it's a consistent way of how we handle kids. The Pbis plan at each building is getting everybody on the same page of how do we address this situation, how are we going to handle discipline, or making sure we have routines in certain areas, and making sure that we're treating kids consistently, whether it's good or bad, so the kid has a clear understanding of what their expectations are. The other side to that probably many of you understand or hear the most of is a reward system. Well, obviously, if kids are doing the right things, we want to acknowledge that. It kind of answers that question, well, what have you ever done for my child? My child's never done anything wrong, but they've never really gotten anything. Well, this kind of answers that. Those kids that come to school every day, work hard, meet the expectations, do what they're asked to do, we want to recognize them. So our Pbis program at each school, part of that plan is to acknowledge those kids that do come to school every day and do the right things. And they should be acknowledged for that. Our TCCTC has taken a turn for us. This was located out at Southern Regional Technical College. It has now came on campus at Tift County High School. We had a partnership with SRTC. They supplied us with 4 classrooms, and what we did, we had our instructors out there for students that wanted to take classes out there and not come onto the main campus. Unfortunately, SRTC continues to grow, and they ran out of room. So we invited them back to the high school. This is more of an independent type program. Kids come, they work on their classes during the day. We have facilitators there. We have an online virtual learning that most of those students work through. And that's even changing a little bit with our evening program that we'll talk about in a little bit. But it's just a flexible way for some of those kids that high school in the traditional sense may just not fit their needs like it does for most students. C Street Academy is our alternative school setting. Unfortunately, we do have some students from time to time that misbehave or do some things that they need to be, let's face it, removed from our normal schools. We start that in 6th grade, I guess officially, for 6th Street Academy. Each school has a certain number of slots, and those students are working with teachers grades 6 through 8 in a rotation. 9 through 12, they work independently through our virtual software. We do have an alternative setting for some of our K-5 students that go there just on a periodic basis from time to time. We get them adjusted to our educational system and move them back to their regular or home school. Tift Academy. Tift Academy is our virtual learning that has moved under the umbrella of Tift County High School. You know, Ms. Ziegler didn't have quite enough to do, so she asked, could we have Tift Academy over at high school? No, I'm just kidding. But it's perfect marriage, and what we say with Tift Academy, it is a true flexibility that we're all working toward with our charter system. It allows kids to work their schedule as needed. We have several kids that may have anxiety issues that just do not want to come to a normal school. And they work home, they work virtually, and they do very well. We have students from time to time that may have health issues. Again, this is an avenue for them. We have some students that, if they wanted to, just say, I don't really want to come to school till about lunch every day. Well, they can come to our normal classes for 2 or 3 days, or 2 or 3 periods, and then they can go to the evening school under Tift County umbrella and work there with teachers. We truly now, from 7:30 to 6:30, have opportunities for kids to make their schedule. We have some students that need to help support their family. They may want to work during the day and then come to the school at night. We have some that just want to work from home, 100% virtual. We have over 40 kids that are doing that right now. To give you an idea, because the question is always, well, how good is the virtual software? How good is the lessons that the kids are learning and the courses that they're taking? We've compared it with our EOCs, and many of our kids are doing very well. We would not be offering that if we didn't feel confident in what was offered through our virtual learning. So again, the flexibility is now there for students. We have some students enrolling in our evening program that are taking an extra class or two because now they're mature enough, they're motivated, and they just need 2 extra classes to go with their normal schedule to graduate on time. So again, we're meeting kids where they're at, we're meeting their needs, and we're putting a plan together. And again, if they're motivated, we can help them get where they need to be. And the goal, obviously, is graduation. Section 504 is an offering that we have for some students that don't quite meet certain criteria as far as special needs or the EIP program or an individual instructional plan. We have a committee that gets together, and if they need some minor modifications to help them in their academic day, then that group gets together to see what can possibly be done for those students. Just some of the overview. Our standards now are the Georgia Standards of Excellence. Again, this is the 4th change that we've had in the last 10 years to our state curriculum. Our goal is to have a balanced framework. We have moved from our past reading, which was literacy collaborative at the K-5 level, to a balanced literacy framework using benchmark literacy resources. We've had great success so far with that with our K-5 teachers and students. LLI, you may hear that is a huge intervention that we use in our RTI process for our students that are struggling beyond the normal with reading. Lucy Calkins writing. One of the struggles we have had as a system for many years is our writing and how we're scoring compared to the state and other districts our size. We continue to look at this constantly, but it is our platform for how we use writing in our system. Right score is where we gain some of our data. That is actually students performing an essay 3 times a year. We send that off to folks that grade, that give us an unbiased grading of those writing samples and send those back to us with different data points that we can look at to improve our writing. Eureka Math is something that we adopted a few years ago, K-5. We will actually be looking at this as a possibility moving into the middle school next year. It's a possibility. We are up for our math adoption 6 through 12 this year, so that will be brought into the discussion. Science and Social Studies. At K-5, we've adopted or K-12 STEM Scopes was one of the first companies to align to our new science standards. And Studies Weekly is what we're working with K-5 with our social studies. Grades 6 through 12, again, our Georgia Standards of Excellence. Springboard is the textbook that we use with our ELA. We use the math workshop model for our math instruction. And again, we will be looking at, again, this year with the new adoption coming up. Science and Social Studies with our new standards. Again, right scoring assessments, which we're not using right score as much as we have been in the past. 612 assessments now. It's through the Georgia Center of Assessment. Edgenuity. Edgenuity is our virtual learning software. Our teachers do have that available to use as a blended approach if they want to use that with their instruction, their daily instruction. And again, students can also use that independently for courses to attain credit. Teachers as advisors, Blue Devil Block, guys, that has become more and more critical, and we're doing a much better job of that now. You're going to hear your 6th graders and 7th graders coming home and already have those discussions with their advisors about career choices. It's a little scary asking a 6th or 7th grader to start. And it's not that they have to stick to that path, but it is those discussions you've got to start having is putting a plan together. And our job, and one thing we take very seriously, is exposing our kids to as many professions and as many jobs that are in our area, that are in our state, our country, and worldwide. Because we know now we're in a global economy. Credit recovery and credit repair. You will hear those discussions quite a bit, especially at the 9-12 level. We have gone to a year-long schedule. One of the things that we had a concern about was those students that they got behind during the school year. We have put in place different units and methods of allowing those kids to go back, rework some of those assignments, take some of those tests over to get mastery for that grade level or that test or that subject that they're working on. Again, vital piece to what we do. Our whole goal is for mastery of the subject. So the old days of the traditional grading and this counts, this much, it's not where we're at, guys. When you're doing standards-based grading, we want our students at the end of the year to be where they need to be. How we get them there in between is going to look very different for each student. CTAE is our Career Technical and Agricultural Education. Currently, we're offering 36 career pathways, and a pathway is 3 succinct courses that you take. This is part of your elective course schedule. I would challenge you to find many high schools that offer as many career paths as we do. This is something that we've done great for several years. This was a big reason we moved to a charter system. One of the things that came along with the charter system is the ability to have a college and career academy. We just had our ribbon cutting last month. We're very excited about where that's going. It gives us even more flexibility in what we're doing. It also gave us $3.125 million for brick and mortar and for resources for our kids for those pathways. We've got a great college and career academy board. Our high school local school governance team will be working very closely with them in the future, talking about what can we do through our college and career academy with our CTA courses to meet the needs of our local employers and our local workforce, our state employers, again, throughout our country and globally. What are the needs, making sure we're meeting the needs of those employers and making sure our kids have what it takes to walk into the workforce as efficiently as possible. In the pathway assessment, we talked about that earlier. Those are the tests that students will take for proficiency. Again, we talked about the flexibility in our curriculum and our pathways, and we want to get students out into the workforce. Hopefully, those of you that are employers in here, you will be getting a call soon from us if you haven't already about placing students in internships, placing students in our work study program in your businesses so they can get a better idea of what's out there, what you have to offer, and it's a great recruiting tool for you, spotting that talent early and getting them to come work for you. Dual enrollment, formerly called Move On When Ready, and before that it was called dual enrollment. It's one of those funny things that we do in education. All of a sudden our governor said, we're going back to dual enrollment. Okay, we're back to dual enrollment. It really didn't change what we've been doing. This is something we've done great for many years. We have hundreds of students in our dual enrollment programs. SRTC and ABAC are great partners with us. We'll continue to see more and more kids take advantage of this. You have many kids that spend, especially their senior year and some their junior and senior year, will spend